In the heart of Mecca, beneath the blazing sun of the Arabian desert, the enemies of Prophet Muhammad once again gathered to mock and insult the messenger of Allah. With bitter smiles and cruel whispers, they believed they had found a way to strike him at his most vulnerable point. "Look at Muhammad," they sneered. "He has no surviving sons. When he dies, his name will disappear, his message will fade, and his legacy will end. He is truly apt to cut off from all good." But what these disbelievers did not realize was that Allah Almighty was about to reveal a divine gift so powerful that it would silence their mockery forever. A gift that would flow endlessly until the day of judgment, honoring his beloved prophet in a way no human legacy ever could. Before we continue, from which country are you watching this video? And if you love inspiring stories from Islamic history and wish to learn more about the wisdom and mercy of our beloved prophet, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our content. The year was around 608 CE, and the persecution of the early Muslims had reached unbearable levels. The Quraysh, led by the fiercest opponents of Islam, intensified their campaign against Prophet Muhammad. Their attacks were not limited to physical harm or economic pressure. They targeted him emotionally, striking at the deepest wounds of his personal life. One of their most heartless tactics was mocking him for the loss of his sons, especially his beloved child Al-Qasim, who had passed away in infancy. In pre-Islamic Arabian society, a man without a surviving male heir was viewed as disgraced, someone whose legacy would vanish with his death. The enemies of Islam exploited this painful loss and labeled the prophet as apt to cut off without posterity. The pain of losing a child pierces the heart of any parent, and Prophet Muhammad, being fully human, felt this sorrow deeply. His noble wife Khadijah, may Allah be pleased with her, had given birth to several children, but the sons did not survive, leaving only daughters. In a society that measured honor and legacy through male offspring, this became a constant source of ridicule. They would point at him mockingly and say, "When Muhammad dies, no one will carry his name or his mission. Islam will die with him." But Allah, always the most merciful, had a far greater plan. One blessed night, as the prophet stood in prayer within the sacred precincts of Mecca, reflecting on the hardships facing the growing Muslim community and, perhaps, feeling the weight of these cruel personal attacks, the angel Jibril, peace be upon him, descended with the revelation that would turn sorrow into everlasting joy and humiliation into eternal triumph. The shortest chapter of the Quran, consisting of only 3 verses, was revealed. Though brief in words, it carried meanings and blessings so vast that they would echo through history forever. "Indeed, we have granted you all, so pray to your Lord and offer sacrifice. Indeed, your enemy is the one who is cut off." When these verses settled into the heart of Prophet Muhammad, a visible transformation took place. The sadness that once touched his noble face gave way to a radiant joy that seemed to shine from his very soul. The companions who witnessed this moment later described how his entire demeanor changed, as though he had just received news of the greatest gift imaginable. And truly, he had. But what was this Al-Kawthar that Allah had promised? The companions and scholars devoted great effort to understanding the depth of this single word. Derived from an Arabic root meaning abundant goodness, Al-Kawthar was not a single blessing but a river of countless favors bestowed upon the Prophet and, through him, upon the entire Muslim Ummah. The most well-known explanation, narrated by many companions including Anas ibn Malik, may Allah be pleased with him, describes Al-Kawthar as a magnificent river in paradise unlike any river known to mankind. But this is no ordinary river. According to authentic hadith, when Prophet Muhammad was asked about Al-Kawthar during his miraculous night journey, the Isra and Miraj, he described it in words that filled the hearts of his companions with awe and longing. Al-Kawthar, the Prophet said, is a river that my Lord has promised me in paradise. He went on to describe its breathtaking beauty. Its banks are made of pure gold, and it flows over pearls and rubies. Its water is whiter than milk and sweeter than honey, and its fragrance is more pleasing than musk. Whoever drinks from it will never experience thirst again. The description continued with details that stretched the imagination of all who heard it. The Prophet explained that the width of this river extended farther than the distance between major lands, spanning vast expanses that the human mind can scarcely comprehend. Yet, the true miracle of this heavenly river lies not only in its physical splendor, but in its deep spiritual meaning. Every act of worship performed by the followers of Prophet Muhammad, every prayer offered, every charity given, every moment of remembrance of Allah causes Al-Kawthar to flow more abundantly. It represents a continuous stream of spiritual reward that reaches the Prophet through the righteous deeds of his Ummah until the day of judgment. The companions were further amazed to learn that the vessels used to drink from are as numerous as the stars in the sky. These cups of gold and silver never empty, and those who drink from them will be recognized by the Prophet through the radiant light of wudu shining on their faces. This river will serve as a sacred gathering place where Prophet Muhammad will meet his Ummah before they enter paradise, offering them drink with his own blessed hands. However, the meaning of Al-Kawthar extends far beyond this magnificent river. Great scholar Ibn Abbas, may Allah be pleased with him, and his father explained that Al-Kawthar represents all the abundant goodness that Allah bestowed upon Prophet Muhammad. This includes the gift of prophethood itself, the honor of being the final messenger, the revelation of the Quran, and the blessing of having the largest ummah among all the prophets. Other scholars understood Al-Kawthar to signify the immense number of people who would embrace Islam throughout history. While the enemies of the Prophet mocked him for having no surviving sons, Allah promised him countless spiritual children, millions upon millions, who would carry his message across the world. Every person who declares La ilaha illa Muhammadur Rasulullah becomes, in a spiritual sense, a follower nurtured by the guidance of Prophet Muhammad, continuing his legacy and spreading his teachings. This surah was revealed at a moment when the Prophet was in greatest need of divine reassurance. The early years of his mission were marked by severe persecution, social boycott, and relentless personal attacks. The passing of his beloved wife Khadija, may Allah be pleased with her, and his uncle Abu Talib, remembered as the year of sorrow, left him deeply grieved and outwardly unsupported. His enemies seized upon these losses to intensify their mockery. Abu Lahab, the Prophet's own uncle and one of his fiercest opponents, openly declared that Muhammad was finished, that his legacy would end with him, and that Islam would soon disappear. Other Quraysh leaders, including Abu Jahl and Umayyah ibn Khalaf, echoed these cruel predictions, convinced they were witnessing the decline of what they viewed as a troublesome movement. But Allah's wisdom operates far beyond human perception. What the enemies of Islam believed to be the Prophet's weakness, his lack of surviving male heirs, became one of his greatest strengths. By not leaving behind biological sons who could claim religious or political authority, Islam was protected from dynastic corruption that had distorted earlier religious traditions. The message would belong not to a bloodline, but to all who believed. The second verse of Surah Al-Kauthar then gave clear instruction on how the Prophet should respond to this extraordinary gift. So pray to your Lord and offer sacrifice, gratitude through worship, devotion through obedience, victory through sincerity. This command carried profound wisdom within its apparent simplicity. Allah was teaching his messenger that the proper response to divine blessings is never pride or self-glorification, but increased worship, humility, and gratitude. The word fasali, so pray, does not refer only to the 5 daily prayers, though they are certainly included. Rather, it signifies a complete state of devotion and constant connection with Allah. It encompasses every form of worship, including the voluntary night prayers that Prophet Muhammad would perform for long hours, standing until his blessed feet would swell from devotion when his beloved wife Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, once asked why he exerted himself so intensely in worship when Allah had already forgiven his past and future sins. He replied with humility, "Should I not be a grateful servant?" The command to sacrifice in this verse also carries multiple layers of meaning. On a literal level, it refers to the physical act of offering sacrifice as an expression of gratitude to Allah. Following the tradition of Prophet Ibrahim, peace be upon him, this act would later be firmly established in Islamic practice as Qurbani during Hajj and Eid al, when Muslims around the world sacrifice animals and distribute the meat among family, neighbors, and the poor. On a deeper spiritual level, sacrifice symbolizes the complete surrender of one's desires, ego, and personal grievances to the will of Allah. Prophet Muhammad was being guided to sacrifice any feelings of pain, resentment, or desire for retaliation against those who mocked and harmed him. Instead, he was instructed to rise above personal hurt and dedicate himself entirely to worship and to conveying the divine message. This represents the highest form of sacrifice, giving up one's own emotions and grievances for the sake of a higher, eternal purpose. The third and final verse of this powerful surah then delivered Allah's decisive response to the enemies of Islam. Indeed, your enemy is the one who is cut off. This verse completely reversed the insult that had been directed at Prophet Muhammad. Allah declared that it was not his messenger who would be forgotten, but those who opposed him. The word shani'ak refers specifically to those who harbored hatred, malice, and enmity toward the Prophet. Allah promised that despite their temporary power and influence in Meccan society, they would ultimately be the ones cut off from all goodness both in this world and the hereafter. Their names would fade, their legacies would collapse, and their opposition would only serve to highlight the eternal nature of the Prophet's message. History has proven this divine promise to be undeniably true. Who today remembers Abu Jahl, Abu Lahab, or Umayyah ibn Khalaf except as symbols of opposition to Islam? Their wealth, status, and tribal pride, once thought to make them superior to the orphaned prophet, have long turned to dust. Meanwhile, the name of Muhammad is mentioned billions of times every single day in prayers, in the call to prayer, and in expressions of love and reverence across the globe. The impact of this surah on the early Muslim community was immediate and profound. The companions, who had endured relentless persecution and witnessed the cruel mockery of their beloved prophet, found renewed strength and hope in these verses. They understood that Allah himself had entered the dispute and that his judgment was final. That Anas ibn Malik, may Allah be pleased with him, reported that when this surah was revealed, he saw the Prophet smile in a way he had not seen for months. The heavy burden of sorrow was lifted from his heart, replaced with calm assurance and confidence in the future of his mission. The Prophet gathered his companions and recited the revelation to them. As they listened, their hearts filled with joy, certainty, and renewed determination. The timing of this revelation perfectly demonstrates Allah's complete knowledge of human nature and the emotional needs of his messengers. It arrived precisely when the Prophet needed it most, granting him the spiritual strength to continue his mission, despite escalating opposition, and that divine support would prove essential in the years ahead, for although the trials would intensify, victory was already written. Scholars of Quranic exegesis have noted that Surah Al-Kauthar serves multiple purposes beyond offering comfort to Prophet Muhammad. It establishes foundational theological principles that continue to guide Muslims across generations. Foremost among these principles is the reminder that Allah's judgment differs fundamentally from human judgment. What people perceive as weakness, loss, or failure may in fact be a source of immense strength within Allah's divine plan. The deeper meanings of Al-Kawthar became increasingly clear as the Prophet explained its significance to his companions during various gatherings. Ibn Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, and his father reported that the Prophet once said, "My pool is as wide as the distance between Isa and Aden. Its water is whiter than silver and sweeter than honey. Its vessels are as numerous as the stars in the sky. Whoever drinks from it will never thirst again." Through these teachings, the companions began to understand that the promise of Al-Kawthar was not only a future blessing in paradise, but also an ongoing reality unfolding before their eyes. Every person who accepted Islam became a new drop in this river of abundant goodness. Every prayer offered, every act of kindness performed, and every moment of patience shown in the face of persecution added to the flow of blessings Allah had promised his messenger Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, may Allah be pleased with him, the closest companion of the Prophet. Often reflected on how the revelation of this surah marked a decisive turning point in the morale of the early Muslim community. He observed that after its revelation, the believers carried themselves with renewed confidence, certain that Allah had personally guaranteed the success of their mission. This confidence proved contagious. It drew others to explore the message of Islam, not through force, but through the quiet strength of faith and conviction. The linguistic miracle of Surah Al-Kawthar also captivated Arab poets and orators. Its extraordinary conciseness, paired with profound depth of meaning and flawless rhythm, challenged the highest literary standards of the time. Every word was precisely chosen, forming layers of meaning that continued to unfold with reflection. The subtle rhyme and alliteration of the Arabic verses created a musical qualities to memorize, yet impossible to forget, further demonstrating the Quran's inimitable nature. As the years passed and Islam spread beyond the borders of Arabia, the divine promise contained in Surah Al-Kawthar manifested in ways even the most hopeful early believers could scarcely imagine. The abundant good promised by Allah appeared in tangible form. Entire nations embraced Islam, millions entered the faith, and a civilization emerged that championed knowledge, learning, and scholarship. Libraries were founded, sciences flourished, and intellectual traditions developed that preserved and transmitted knowledge to future generations. Throughout history, the image of Al-Kawthar in paradise became a source of strength and hope for Muslims facing hardship. During the Crusades, Muslim soldiers would recite this surah before battle, drawing courage from the promise that their Prophet would welcome them at the Blessed River if they fell as martyrs during eras of persecution and colonization. Scholars and ordinary believers alike found comfort in the assurance that oppressors, no matter how powerful, would ultimately be the ones cut off from lasting success. The concept of sacrifice mentioned in the second verse gained special significance during the Hijrathi migration from Mecca to Medina. The early Muslims sacrificed their homes, wealth, and tribal ties to follow the Prophet. Yet what appeared to be loss became the foundation of strength, paving the way for the establishment of the first Islamic state and the rapid spread of Islam. In Medina, the Prophet embodied the teachings of Surah Al-Kawthar in daily life. He established communal prayers that united the believers in gratitude to Allah. He organized systems of charity to ensure that the abundant good promised by Allah reached every segment of society, especially the poor and vulnerable. These practices laid the foundations of Islamic social, spiritual, and economic systems, principles that continue to guide Muslim communities around the world today. The promise that the enemies of Islam would be cut off manifested itself in striking ways throughout history. The mighty Persian Empire, which had appeared invincible for centuries, collapsed within a few decades of the rise of Islam. The Byzantine Empire, which resisted early Muslim expansion, gradually lost its territories and influence. Meanwhile, Islamic civilization continued to grow and flourish, establishing great centers of learning from Cordoba to Baghdad, and from Cairo to Delhi. During the golden age of Islamic civilization, scholars of diverse backgrounds worked together to translate, preserve, and advance human knowledge. This remarkable intellectual awakening was yet another manifestation of Al-Kawthar, the abundant good flowing from the message brought by Prophet Muhammad. Fields such as mathematics, astronomy, medicine, philosophy, and engineering flourished under Islamic patronage. benefiting not only Muslims but all of humanity. The daily recitation of Surah Al-Kauthar in prayer remains a living reminder of these divine promises. Each time a believer recites its verses, their commitment to gratitude, worship, and trust in Allah's ultimate justice is renewed. The surah becomes a source of spiritual strength, especially during moments of hardship or opposition. The historical context surrounding the revelation of Surah Al-Kawthar also teaches a vital lesson about the nature of divine support. Allah did not immediately remove every difficulty faced by Prophet Muhammad and his followers. Instead, He granted them the spiritual strength, reassurance, and confidence needed to endure those trials. This pattern continues to guide believers today, reminding them that divine help often arrives as inner resilience rather than immediate relief. The message of this surah transcends its historical moment. Every believer who experiences mockery, rejection, persecution, or apparent failure can find comfort in its words. The promise of Al-Kawthar is not limited to Prophet Muhammad alone, but extends to all who sincerely follow his path. The abundant good Allah promises is available to those who respond to his blessings with gratitude, devotion, and increased worship. In the modern world, Surah Al-Kawthar remains deeply relevant. Whether Muslims face Islamophobia, economic hardship, social discrimination, or personal loss, this surah offers reassurance that Allah's support is always near. It teaches that what appears to be weakness may become a source of strength, and that divine justice will ultimately prevail over oppression. As we reflect on the profound wisdom contained within these three brief verses, we are reminded of Allah's boundless mercy and perfect justice. He does not abandon his faithful servants, even in their darkest moments. The story behind Surah Al-Kauthar teaches us that divine help often arrives in unexpected forms and at precisely the right time, encouraging us to remain steadfast even when circumstances seem hopeless. The enduring legacy of Prophet Muhammad stands as the clearest proof of the promise made in Surah Al. More than 14 centuries after his passing, his influence continues to grow. People embrace Islam every day, adding to the river of faith flowing through human history. His teachings continue to shape personal character, social ethics, and spiritual growth for over 1 billion people around the world. May Allah grant us all a share in the abundant goodness of Al-Kawthar. May we follow the example of Prophet Muhammad by responding to divine blessings with gratitude, worship, and service to others. And may we be among those who drink from the blessed river in paradise, welcomed by the beloved Prophet on that magnificent day, when all divine promises are fulfilled and every truth is revealed in the perfect justice of Allah Almighty.